Since the end of July, water and wastewater utilities in at least 7 American states have reported cyber incidents to the FBI. In some of them, the attack did not sit there quietly. Pressure dropped. In some places, water overflowed where it should not have, and staff fell back to running the plant by hand. The way in was not exotic. The FBI and the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, say the intruders went for industrial controllers that were reachable from the open internet, small boxes that open and close valves and start pumps. Once inside, they changed the address and the password. Staff could still see the plant through the window, but not through the screen. Now, hold 2 objects in your head. On the left, that controller. On the right, the form a state inspector fills in when they check a water utility, pipes, chlorine samples. The American rule that says, look at your cybersecurity, is attached to the object on the right. One rule once tried to connect them. It lasted 4 months. 3 states and 2 water industry groups went to court. A federal appeals court froze it in July 2023. In that October, the agency withdrew it. Nothing has replaced it. The controllers are still on the internet, and the inspector's form still asks about chlorine. Here's the state of play. Starting the 27th of July, utilities in at least 7 states told the FBI they had been hit. In Minnesota, more than 30 systems were touched, including a city of about 80,000 people, large enough that the federal rule we are about to discuss already applies to it. Hold on to that. This is not simply a story about small towns falling through a gap. In Michigan, 9 systems. Officials said the water stayed safe to drink, and we will be equally careful. This is a story about control of the plant, not about what came out of the tap. The federal alert describes the pattern without drama. Small programmable controllers, widely used in these plants, were sitting on the public internet. The intruders changed network settings and passwords. The plant kept running. The operators lost the ability to watch it and steer it. You will have seen speculation about who did this. Investigators have not publicly attributed these attacks to anyone, so neither will we. It changes nothing in the design question. Because whoever knocked, the door was the same. A controller reachable from anywhere. At many utilities, no federal rule requires anything about that door. And at the ones where a rule does apply, it does not require that the door be shut. Start with the shape of the industry, because it explains everything that follows. The United States has about 50,000 community water systems. 8 out of 10 of them serve 3,300 people or fewer. Remember that number, 3,300, because it is the line the federal rule draws, and most of the country's water systems sit below it. This is not an industry of giants. It is tens of thousands of small towns, each with a couple of operators and no security department. And now the number that keeps us honest. About 8% of those systems serve roughly 80% of Americans. So the small systems are most of the map, and the large ones are most of the people. Any rule here has to choose which of those 2 facts it is built around. The federal duty came in 2018, and Congress did not write a new law for it. It added a paragraph to the same Drinking Water Act from 1974, which is why this duty lives inside a statute about what comes out of the tap. The paragraph says a system serving more than 3,300 people must assess its risks. The security of its computer systems is one of the things that assessment must consider. Write an emergency plan and certify to the EPA that it has done so. Notice the verb. The duty is to assess and to certify, not to be secure. Nobody grades the assessment. There is no minimum requirement, no inspection of the network, nothing saying a controller must come off the open internet. A utility can be fully compliant on the morning it is taken over, and the assessments refresh every 5 years. The second round is running right now in 2025 and 2026. The paperwork is being renewed while the plants are being probed. Here is the defect, and it has 2 halves. The first, the duty is pinned to how many customers you have. The danger is pinned to whether a controller of yours can be reached from the internet. Those 2 things have almost nothing to do with each other. A system serving 3,000 people with an exposed controller can flood a street. A system serving 50,000 with nothing exposed cannot. The second half decided the story. The federal instrument for checking a water utility is the sanitary survey, an inspection built for pipes, chlorine, and samples. There is nothing equivalent for the plant's controls. So when the EPA wanted to reach cybersecurity, it reached through the tool it already had. In March 2023, it did exactly that. A memo telling states to evaluate the cybersecurity of the computers and controllers that run a plant during those sanitary surveys. Missouri, Arkansas, and Iowa sued, joined by 2 industry groups, including the association that represents rural water systems. Their argument was not cybersecurity does not matter. It was that Congress had deliberately limited this duty to larger systems, that a memo cannot enlarge an inspection built for something else, and that the cost would land on very small towns. In July 2023, a federal appeals court froze the memo. That October, the agency withdrew it, saying openly that the lawsuits were the reason. Borrowed authority is fragile in a particular way. The first serious challenge does not just remove the rule, it leaves a court order behind saying you cannot do that again. Before designing anything, be fair to the town that sued. A utility serving 3,000 people may have 2 operators and a part-time manager, and the only money it has is what its customers pay on their water bills. For that town, a security program is not a piece of paper. It is a line in the budget, and it comes out of something else: a pump replacement, a leak survey, a salary. And there is a third party nobody pulls: the state. Sanitary surveys are done by state inspectors, people trained on chlorine levels, backflow, sampling. The 2023 memo asked those same inspectors to judge a control network, a different profession entirely. Whatever you think of the memo, a duty means something only when somebody in the state office knows what they are looking at, and that person has to be hired before the rule can bite. That is not a footnote to the plan. In practice, it is the plan. So, a duty attached to customer counts, sitting inside an inspection built for water quality, a danger at the plant that nobody is required to check, and a rulemaking route that has been tested and closed. First design: stop borrowing an instrument and give the sector its own. Europe did this. Drinking water and wastewater are named essential services, with required security measures, incident reporting on a clock, a first warning within 24 hours, inspections, fines, and named responsibility for management. And it buys what nobody in the American system has. A reporting clock produces a picture of who is actually exposed. Now the catch, because it is our own catch, Europe did not put this duty on every utility either. The directive applies above a size line drawn on staff and turnover instead of customers, with a power to reach down and pull in a small operator that is the only supplier in its area. So the European answer is not no threshold. It is a different threshold, plus a door through it. And that door has a price. Somebody must decide, utility by utility, who is critical enough, exactly the judgment the American agency was told it had no authority to make. Second design: stop counting customers. Attach the duty to the thing that creates the risk. Does this utility have a controller reachable from outside? If yes, a short list of requirements. If no, a short checklist and nothing more. A town of 3,000 whose controls are not connected to the outside world at all is left alone. The price is that nobody knows who is exposed. There is no inventory, and exposure changes the day a contractor opens a port for remote support. And notice what the answer rests on: the utility's own word. That is the same self-certification we just called the weak point of the rule we have. Except now the box you tick decides whether any rule applies to you at all. A regulator who never reads the assessment will not verify the disconnection either. Third design: the one American infrastructure that already does this. On the high voltage power grid, industry writes the standards. A federal regulator approves them, and breaking them carries penalties for over 15 years now. The price is what electricity quietly did to make it work. It regulates only the high voltage backbone, a few thousand organizations, and leaves thousands of local distribution utilities out. Water has no backbone to carve off. The plant serving 3,000 people is not a branch of the system. It is the whole system for that town. So the same machine would cover about 30 times as many organizations, either an enormous supervisory apparatus or a push to merge small utilities into big ones, and local control over your own water is precisely what that gives up. The useful question here is not should water be regulated. It is narrower, and it travels. When a rule imposes a duty, asks what the duty is pinned to, and whether that is the same thing the danger is pinned to. Customer counts, revenue bands, employee numbers, floor area, these get reached for because they are easy to count, not because risk respects them. Every design we just looked at uses one, so the question is never whether there is a line, but what it is drawn on, and who may step over it. And a second one, for any agency announcement you read, whose instrument is this? If a body is reaching for a power built for something else because it has nothing of its own, the rule may work for a while, and it will disappear the first time someone with a right to sue objects. The box that opens the valve does not know how many people live in the town. That number is in the law, not in the network. A rule can only protect what it is pointed at.